Hello, folks.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
We're back for
The
part
Leclercs,
the Leclercs, Michael and Deborah. This is part two of our audiovisual book.
Scientific Evidence for God.
Well, that is chapter 7. The book is actually entitled uh, No Greater Truth in Love, and we are doing part 2 on chapter 7, which is the scientific evidence for God. And we are actually on page 55, in the lower half of page 55. And we are going to be talking about how true science always confirms the Bible.
And you can check it out also on oasisoftruth.ca if that's where, if you didn't find it on the website, you can always check it out and check out the written format. And we're also going to endeavor to put the video format up.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Because if you don't like reading, we're going to try to just, all right,
Read it to
share it
you.
with you, read it to you, and give you a little bit of video. You can look at
Amen.
us, I guess.
There you go.
That's very exciting. All right. So the true science, always confirms the Bible. And the following list of factors also exposes macroevolution theory as false. This is what we ended part 1 on. And I'm going to read it again. It says, factor number 1, there is no proven biological mechanism which can create new genetic information to be added to an organism's genetic code. That's a big problem. Without such a mechanism, evolution is not possible. All right, now I want us to note the scientific fact that mutations have been observed,
Never been observed.
have never been observed in the history of science to create new beneficial genetic information. And neither does natural selection. They both always lead to a net loss of genetic information. So the bottom line is no new genetic information equals no evolution. And to do a scholarly investigation into this, you can look at Dr. Michael Behe's book. He's a molecular biologist. His latest book is called Darwin Devolves.
Well, the printing of this was his latest book, but
Yeah.
we're not
As far
sure.
as we know.
Yeah.
All right. And now some may object to this using the example of viruses or bacterial mutations that lead to resistance to certain antibiotics or vaccines. But if you thoroughly investigate these types of mutations, you will find something contrary to what you have been led to believe. The mutation which caused the organism to become resistant to the antibiotic or vaccine was not due to any new genetic information being produced, but it was due to a loss of genetic information. So again, we repeat, every point mutation ever observed and examined in the history of science has never created new beneficial genetic information. So that is a huge problem. All right. And a Bible truth now being verified by this cutting edge science is that man and animals were created originally near genetic perfection and have been, since the time of creation, been genetically deteriorating over time. And this is one of the main reasons that man lived to be an average of nearly 1,000 years of age in the first generation. Because after the fall of humans in the Garden of Eden, mutations, disease, and death infected mankind and the animal kingdom as part of the resulting curse from Adam and Eve's rebellion against God. And this resulted in man and animals' progressive genetic breakdown or deterioration over time through mutations and natural selection, because mutations always lead to a loss of genetic information, no gain. As Dr. Michael Behe scientifically confirms in his book entitled Darwin Devolves. Now, this initial near genetic perfection also explains how brothers and sisters and close relatives were able to intermarry without concern for birth defects in the early generations. All right, so when Adam and Eve were created, all right, there were no other humans. All right, and so their children had to intermarry.
And that's what
And
Ken
it was
has.
totally legal because there were no genetic problems in regards to the situation.
And that's what Ken Ham said, that's one of the most often questions that he's asked is, who was Cain's wife? But we are going to explain it.
Okay. All right. So in the early generations, it was possible for marrying a close relatives because there was no genetic load that would have led to deformities and nightmares with regards to the child that would be produced. There wouldn't be those genetic problems that we see today. All right, and thus answering the age-old question, where did Cain get his wife? Now, don't everybody freak out. Incest is considered wrong today, but it was primarily because of genetic defects that was result of interbreeding over several centuries. It was not a moral situation so much. It was more a genetic situation. All right, so we'll explain. After a few thousand years, the genetic breakdown via mutations required God to step in and forbid marriage of close relatives in order to prevent birth defects. And so we need to realize that genetically it has been proven that we have all come from the same original parents. Adam and Eve were real people, and we all came from their lineage. So consequently, we're all marrying a relative, just not a close one. That's the reality. We're all family. Because we're all from the same original parents. All right? One race reality and the Darwinian lie of lower and higher races, okay? Darwin is also guilty of propagating the demonically driven lie of higher and lower races, which has inspired some of the most horrific genocidal slaughters in the history of mankind, including the extermination of over 6 million Jews under Hitler and the Nazi regime during World War II. You can see more about this in the movie Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. Now, the lie of different races has fostered much of the hatred, violence, and murderous atrocities of the past, and even to this day. And unfortunately, is something that is still trying to be stirred up by the liberals and the Democrats. But the bottom line is that there is only one race. We're all related, beloved. All right? And so all this animosity and all this contention about different races is not really...
There's different cultures and different nationalities, but we're all one race and one blood.
The human race. All right? And so this lie... Okay, I got to back up here a little bit. All right, the lie of different races, like I said, has fostered much of the hatred, violence, and murderous atrocities of the past, even to this day. All right, you can Google the atrocities of mass murdering atheists like Joseph Stalin, where some 20 million plus were slaughtered in the transition of Russia into the communist system, or Mao Zedong. 40 million plus exterminated, slaughtered, right? As China transitioned into this new communist totalitarian system. So this is a lie spawned from the pits of hell that should be aggressively refuted by the scientific community, but it's not. Why? Primarily because it will expose their Darwinian evolution for what it is, a huge destructive lie. So as noted above, science has now proven genetically we are all one race, the human race, as the Bible revealed thousands of years ago. The Bible also explains how the human race was divided into different languages and cultures with minor external genetic differences caused by genetic pooling. This historical event, this historical reality is recorded in Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 to 9. You can check it out for yourself. At that time, humans were all one language, and they were pooling their intellectual resources, all right, towards evil again as it was before the flood. So, therefore, God decided to stop this progress towards idolatry and evil by confusing their languages and dispersing them over the face of the earth, as he had originally commanded them to do. All right. So consequently, each group had its own very different language, but also a distinct genetic pool of features that became evident over time, which was unique to that particular culture. And the Bible has proven itself to be an amazing book that helps us to understand not only who God is, but also the history of the human race and how things came to be the way that they were. One thing you will discover as you study the Bible is that true science, always confirms the Bible, as does true history and archaeology. All right? Now, number two.
Okay, number 2. So, the total lack of transitional fossils in the fossil record equals millions of missing links, not just one. Dr. David Berlinski shared in the documentary, again in Expelled No Intelligence Allowed, that it would take at least 50,000 major morphological changes for a land-dwelling creature to evolve into a sea-dwelling creature, or vice versa.
This, of course, is the second point, the second illustration of why evolution is impossible, is because there is a total absence of transitional fossils in the fossil record.
So if you cannot find even one airtight example of a transitional fossil to illustrate this, what about the other 49,999, as Dr. Berlinski says? So when you multiply these missing transitional forms up and down the evolutionary tree, you end up with millions of missing links because it never happened. And also, the worldwide flood of Noah's day produced the fossil record, not millions of years, as you're about to discover. So I think one thing too, if you do a little bit of a study in, you know how they always have these lines that connect one kind of species to the other kind of species, and if you notice, most of the dotted lines are where the transitional forms are, because they have no evidence of the transitions.
And this whole idea of a worldwide flood is becoming mainstream science. And you can actually see this. One of Joe Rogan's, programs was on this very thing. And he was blown away by, I believe these guys were secular, geologists that were showing him that there is abundant evidence that there was a worldwide deluge. And so it's not just creationists and scientists, that have a Christian worldview, but even atheistic, geologists are now acknowledging the overwhelming evidence on planet Earth that illustrate that there had to be a deluge, a worldwide flood. All right. Now, number 3 example of why evolution is suspect is the fossil record is this giant sedimentary graveyard of animals which were killed and buried under the sediment of this worldwide flood of Noah's day, approximately 4,400 years ago. Not millions and millions of years. All right. The evidence for the reality of a young Earth is because of these very things, that things like this evolutionary all right, geological column, which supposedly proves that these things,
In
are
different
millions
layers.
of years old. The reality is, as I'm going to read this through, and then I'll make additional comments afterwards. It says empirical evidence clearly reveals that these sedimentary layers of the geological column, which they say represents millions of years, were laid down by this massive deluge of water that was released from above and below the earth during the flood of Noah's day. And this is recorded. You can read about it in Genesis chapter 6, 7, 8, and I believe chapter 9. All right. So this unimaginable volume of water drowned and buried the corpses of all these air-breathing animals during the almost 1 year that it covered the earth. And during this time, massive amounts of sediment were shifted and redeposited over the earth's land masses by this huge amount of water. And it led to the forming of this petrified geological column containing these millions of fossilized animals, carcasses. All right? These animals had to be buried, otherwise they would have just decayed and there would have been no evidence. But because they were instantly, all right,
Petrified.
buried under the sediment and then became petrified, we have the record. All right? And so these fossilized remains, all right, are all over the world. And that this petrified geological column contains millions of these fossilized animals across the face of the earth, including on mountaintops. And so this also explains why there are mass burial sites of fossils all over the earth, including mass burial sites where these bones are all mixed together. It's because it was by these water and the movement of the water and then being buried under the sediment where these things were actually formed and they were petrified over time. And it doesn't take long to petrify. It can be done in a matter of 60, 70 years. So after the flood waters receded, as the ocean basins formed, the waters retreated below the earth's surface again as before the flood. And consequently, these fossils are not millions of years, they're only thousands of years old. And it's approximately 4,400 years ago. So there's no millions of years magic. And again, no millions of years magic, again, equals no evolution. And you can see the book Scientific Creationism by Dr. Henry M. Morris, where he goes into very detailed discussion of this. All right, Deborah, you want to do this one?
Number 4, radiometric dating methods are based on false assumptions that totally distort the estimated age of rock formations. So I think once again, not taking into the account of the biblical flood, the Bible reveals that the one major reason for these false estimates of time is that before Noah's flood, the earth was surrounded by a water canopy that would have blocked much of the radiation from the sun of over 1,600 years. In Genesis 1, verse 7 to 8.
In Genesis 1, verse 7 and 8, it says that when God created the earth and the atmosphere, that there was water that was housed above the atmosphere and water below the atmosphere on the surface of the earth. And it was this water canopy that was released upon the earth during the time of Noah's flood, where it rained for 40 days and 40 nights nonstop. That was the releasing of this water canopy that God had put around the earth because God knew what was going to happen.
And it also says that there are waters from the deep that were also released at the same time.
Yes.
So this totally destroys their uniformitarian radiometric assumptions because things were much different in the past than today. So note that this water canopy was released upon the earth at the time of the flood. And without taking into consideration these historical, environmental realities, the current radiometric dating being produced are totally exaggerated and false. And you can look at the information by a nuclear physicist, Dr. Vernon R. Cups, and it's called Rethinking Radiometric Dating.
All right, and so we want to understand that with this water canopy around the Earth, all the harmful radiation from the sun, all right, and this radiometric data would have been blocked by this water canopy. So it totally, there were 1,600 years where this canopy was around the Earth, and so all their assumptions based on everything being the same, they were not the same. Things changed dramatically during the time of the flood and thereafter. And so all their assumptions have made these radiometric dating, all right, estimates totally out of whack. All right, number 5. Now, number 5 thing that really demonstrates that evolution is not a reality is that dinosaurs are in the Bible. All right, example, the behemoth and Leviathan that are mentioned in Job chapter 40 and 41.
Not just at Wonderland.
Not just at the rides at Wonderland, no. They lived with man and they did not go extinct 65 to 70 million years ago. All right, before 1841, they were called dragons. You can see this in the King James Version of the Bible. You can see it in Isaiah 27, verse 1, and Malachi chapter 1, verse 3. There's references throughout the Bible to these dragons. All right, this fact is confirmed by ancient cave and canyon drawings, along with ancient pictures, carvings, engravings on walls. All right, there's stones and molded figurines of dinosaurs found around the world. All right, ancient. And so there are also many ancient written accounts of men encountering these dragon or dinosaur-like creatures. For example, St. George's slaying of the dragon, and there's several others.
The Loch Ness Monster.
Loch Ness Monster is a more recent one, and actually that Loch Ness Monster was demonstrated to be a plesiosaur and a supposedly extinct dinosaur. All right, but we're not going to go down that alley right now. All right, so if ancient man did not see dinosaurs, if they were, after, long before them, how could they have drawn pictures of them? How could they have carved and molded images of them? How could they have written detailed accounts of these encounters with them? All right, it's absurd. The reality is that all these ancient engravings and stones and molded figurines and carvings and everything prove that men lived with the dragons, which we call today dinosaurs. All right. Also, they have found soft tissue and blood cells found in fossilized T-Rex bones. It is impossible for soft tissue and blood cells to exist for millions of years. Okay? And they've also found other dinosaur bones that are actually unfossilized, proving that they're not millions of years old. And if you want to see an excellent presentation on this, you can go online, and it's called Does the Bible Describe Sauropod Dinosaurs? And it's at genesisapologetics.com. And you could also read our article, The Truth About Dinosaurs, at oasisoftruth.ca. All right? So, if you want to investigate further details regarding scientific evidences for God and the collapse of macroevolutionary theory, you can also check out the article Scientific Evidences for God on the website at oasisoftruth.ca. And if you're confused about how stars can be millions of light years, millions of light years, all right, from a young Earth, all right, see the explanation on page 63 under the title, Who is this God who saves and created us? And we're going to go to that, and then we're going to take probably a break. We'll see here. on page 63. This is under who is this God who saves and created us? Now, it states that God is a supernatural, loving, all-powerful being. And that's revealed in Revelation chapter 19, verse 6, where it reveals God as being all-powerful or omnipotent and all-knowing. And he's an all-knowing and eternal being who has no beginning and no end, as it says in Psalm 41, verse 13. And as mentioned earlier, God, who is eternal, exists outside of the temporal realm of time, space, and matter which he created. God is eternal. He has no beginning. He has no end. He existed before this temporal universe ever came into being. So, however, he's able now and on an ongoing basis to interact and act within our temporal universe as he so desires. So the true and living God is the supernatural causation of the universe, which we've talked about previously, and for the reason why there is life on planet Earth. The Bible alone clearly reveals this God who created us, all right? No other religious writings reveals the details of such a supreme being as we see revealed in God's Word, the Holy Bible. The Bible reveals a God who is supernaturally all-powerful and unlimited in his intellectual capacity. And this so states in the Bible, it says, for my thoughts, God is speaking, he says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Isaiah 55, verse 8 and 9. All right? The God who created the natural realm and its laws is not restricted in any way to its natural parameters or limitations. God is a supernatural being. What he does is outside the natural. And so he is not limited to these natural parameters or limitations. All right, as it goes on to say, God is a supernatural being who operates in a supernatural and eternal dimension beyond our limited natural comprehension. Consequently, we don't need to be bent out of shape when there are things in the natural order that we cannot explain naturally, because God does things supernaturally.
Supernatural God.
For example, the chronology of the Bible reveals that the current created order of life on planet Earth is only about 6,000 years old. Now, some believe that the planet itself may be somewhat older, and that God may have used it temporarily as a penal colony for Satan and his fallen angelic friends. All right. However, empirical evidence for it being millions of years old is sadly lacking, as discussed earlier. And you can look at this at page 3 and 4 on the scientific evidences for God at at oasisoftruth.org.
.ca.
.ca, excuse me. One empirical factor that seems to support the possibility of an older universe is distant starlight. It is estimated that many stars and galaxies are millions of light years away from Earth. And so if that is the case, how can the universe be only thousands of years old as revealed in the Bible, if light from these celestial bodies has been traveling for millions of years? Okay, if God were limited to the natural laws of the created universe, this would be a problem. But he's not. He is a supernatural God who does things outside the natural parameters and the laws of the created order. So, to have projected these celestial bodies out into space at a greater than the speed of light is totally plausible within his supernatural power and ability. All right? So, the Bible reveals that God himself actually stretched out the the heavens supernaturally by his power, not by any natural causation. And you can read that in Psalm 104, verse 2, Isaiah 40, verse 22, Isaiah 44, verse 24, and Zechariah chapter 12, verse 1. So he spread out this vast universe and its galaxies and stars by supernatural means, and consequently, it does not need a naturalistic explanation. And I don't know how he accomplished it, nor do I understand. You'll see a testimony in here about how my dad was raised up off of his deathbed. All right, after a massive heart attack and his kidneys shutting down, all right, and his heart being so badly damaged it would not respond to a pacemaker. There was no natural explanation for that. It was a supernatural event. And how he preserved my dearly beloved wife after she had a tubal pregnancy that hemorrhaged and she lost a massive 9 units. Her total capacity is only 10 units. She lost 7 units of blood and 2 units of blood plasma, but she's still here today because she was supernaturally raised up. And so we do not need to confine the explanation of God's accomplishments to our naturalistic explanation, because he operates in a realm far above and beyond the natural. That's why he's God and we're not. All right, so we want to flip back and we're going to go back and finish off. I think we have only a bit more here for this final dealing. Okay, yeah, we're getting closer, you're getting warmer. All right, yes. Brainwashing a whole generation in love. I'll let Deborah let you share. This is the last part of chapter 7 on brainwashing a whole generation in love.
So clearly we can see that the father of lies, who is Satan, is diligently working through academia and the media to undermine our children's and young people's ability to believe in the existence of our Creator God using evolutionary lies. So unfortunately, Satan, has been working for years in many of the lives of those reading this book.
Or watching this video.
And has been trapped, many, by his deceptive lies, which I guess both of us were raised in the same kind of education system. For example, the current statistics reveal that 2 out of 3 Christian young adults are walking away from their faith during or after university or college.
Okay, so this is a big problem, all right? Young people, even Christian young people who have been brought up in the church, all right, when they are overwhelmed with supposedly scientific evidence, for evolution and things of this nature, has caused many of them to walk away from their faith, all right, after completing university or college, and because they're not getting the other side of the story. But there is another side to the story.
But the good news is that God, in his love for you, is sharing truth through this book and through this video to help unbrainwash us, if you're willing, from the misinformation and lies that you may have ingested along the way.
And you've ingested a lot of them, let me tell you. I did too.
However, in order to be liberated, we must humbly embrace truth, even when we don't like it. Sorry, baby cat is moving around here. And is contrary to what most everyone else around us believes.
Yeah, we don't like to believe things that are contrary to what the majority of people around us believe. And that's the problem, is that most people, Jesus said this, most people would take the broad road that leads to destruction. And unfortunately, most people are believing in the lies, these satanic lies, that are being propagated through the media and through our academic system. And you don't want to go against the grain unless you really
have the truth
of
God's word.
Of God, and God to help you to do so.
So unfortunately, most people today have been brainwashed via the overabundance of media influences that are surrounding us, saturating our minds with the God of this world's lies daily. So as revealed earlier from 2 Corinthians 4, chapter 4, verse 3 to 4, Satan is the God who lies daily.
Who's
As-
the God of this current system? Yeah.
As revealed earlier from 2 Corinthians 4, chapter 4, verse 3 to 4, Satan is the God who controls the current system we live in, including the media and academia.
Yes.
So again, we reiterate the vast majority of media and academics available today, except for those that are overseen by strong born-again believers, are riddled with lies and misinformation. So if you truly want to get free, you must unplug from secular media to a large degree and plug into sources that are under God's influence rather than Satan's.
Amen. So, beloved, there are plenty of scientists who have a Christian worldview, and they interpret the evidence. And in fact, we're going to be taking a group to one of these organizations,
Lord willing.
this summer. We're going to be going to the Ark Encounter as well as the Creation Museum in Petersburg, Kentucky, and we are going to be sitting under the teaching and the exhibits that are state-of-the-art, high-tech stuff, and where they illustrate that the Bible and the Bible's explanation of the existence of this universe and this earth are totally scientifically supportable by empirical science, not by scientific theory. Theory is not, all right, concrete. It is a theory, all right? And so, anyways, we encourage you, if you're interested, you're welcome to come and join us to be a part of that adventure.
If you're watching this in the month of
2023
July,
of July.
2023. But you can always check it out online. They have lots of amazing, excellent teachings, videos, and so forth, and lots of good information there. So we're going to say sayonara for now, and we're going to say adios for part 2. And God bless everyone.
God bless you. And if you have any questions or anything we can help you with, feel free to go to the website, email us, call us, contact us. We're more than happy to address any of your questions. All right? So love you guys. God bless you.
Okay,
And
God
thank you for
bless
being with
you.
us. Bye-bye.